This podcast contains spoilers for the film Original Cast Album Company.
So, Mattie, it's pretty late. We're getting a little punchy. And you came to me with something. What did you bring to me today?
Well, I have brought for you, for your consideration and for introduction into our most hallowed collection, the most hallowed halls of our DVD collection, documentary from one of the great documentary filmmakers of all time, my personal favorite of D.A. Pennebaker's, and this is Original Cast Album Company, which is a behind-the-scenes look at the making of the album version of the Broadway show Company by Stephen Sondheim, directed by Harold Prince. A little bit of magic contained within, in my opinion.
5, 6, 7, 8. Door chimes, in comes company.
So, why the hell did you bring this one into our collection?
Well, as I said, it's one of my it's my favorite film from one of my favorite documentary filmmakers. I think that it's a great piece of Broadway history. I think you're the bigger Broadway fan between the two of us.
Yeah, I'm actually teasing you. I love this. Yeah, I love this. This is... So actually, the reason why I originally watched this was because we watched the show Documentary Now, which
Fantastic.
Did a spoof of this. And actually, that was my first exposure to...
Mine as well.
To, watching the source material, which is this documentary. And I think this is just a wild little ride of a 19-hour recording session in the 70s with, some of Broadway's greats, including Elaine Stritch. The score and the lyrics were written by Stephen Sondheim. And the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just like, wow, Sondheim really doesn't want anyone to be able to successfully sing one of his songs. Because every song is so daunting. I'm like exhausted by the end of watching that because I could feel their pain.
And he's so meticulous and precise, and as it goes on and on, because this is the record, this is the official record for everybody in Peoria. For them to listen to Company, they have to nail this one recording, and they can't lean on the energy in the room the way that you do in a Broadway show. They can't they can't let the spectacle of the dancing and things like that, the husband and wife wrestling, you can't lean on that in the same way. And there's very few interviews in this documentary. It was much more inspired by like the French cinema verite movement. And that's where Pennebaker is really, I think, the best in terms of just capturing the thing in front of him. Just incredible camera work, incredible sound design, and just always being in the right place to find the spontaneous moment. And the stakes feel so high, and as it's going on, and having worked on movie productions that often plan on a 12-hour day and inch into 17, 18, 19, 20 hours, and the longer you go, the worse the return is, but you can't go home until you get it perfect. I relate to this very much.
Yeah, it's actually really cool how Pennebaker kind of builds this story. Like, there is a bit of tension as the day goes on because it starts and, I assume they're like having lunch. It's like Sondheim and the musical director and Elaine Stritch, and they're like, yeah, we're probably going to wrap up by like 3, 4 a.m. And you could see Elaine Stritch kind of like, that's really, that's a long day. And, when the clock finally strikes 3 a.m., they're nowhere near done. And, the big number, Elaine Stritch's The Ladies Who Lunch, comes pretty late in the day. It's really early morning now.
Yeah, it's the last that they have to do, and everybody else, all the rest of the cast have gone home.
Yeah.
And she's still there, the orchestra's still there, everybody in the control room is still there, and they're waiting on her, and she feels the pressure, and you can just tell, like, where, like, everybody's egos are just kind of, like, bruised because Sondheim can't let it go, and he, you know, and Stritch, you know, is, like, trying to say, like, no, I can do it, and she's just making them sit through bad take after bad take, but she doesn't have the voice anymore.
No, she's like, 3 takes, that's all I'm asking for. And then cut to, like, okay, here we go, Ladies Who Lunch, take number 8. And I'm like, oh. And, you know, it's funny because the first take, I'm like, that sounded great. And you can see Sondheim's just like, nope, it's not. They call it, I think the musical director calls it flaccid. It's like not, you know, it's just not good. And, you know, to me, I'm like, this is fine. But it's so interesting to me, the ways in which, you know, they, and this is throughout the documentary, how like Sondheim picks up on these small little musical changes that, like, as an, you know, just as an audience member, you know, if I was watching the show, I wouldn't pick up on it. Even if I was listening to the record, I wouldn't pick up on it. But this has to be so perfect, and he understands this music so well, and it's got to be that, you know, they've got to hit it every time. And it's sort of really interesting too, because you're watching them and they're singing, and you could see that they want to get into the acting part of it. You know, they want to be moving around, and like that's part of their performance because they're musical theater, you know, performers. But they have to be a little more restrained here. And I think it definitely causes some anxiety for them because they're not able to sort of perform the song in the way that they normally would. And there's like, it does feel like the stakes are just very high here.
Yeah. And you were talking about how Sondheim, you know, is picking up on all these little things, and little things that I would never even necessarily consider if I hadn't seen this, of how one of the singers changed a note over time, and he didn't realize it until they got in the recording booth.
Let me hear you do this. Can find each other in the crowded streets and the guarded parks. Yeah, you're doing an A there.
Oh yeah, by the
It used to be an F sharp, and it's gradually become an A. Find each other in crowded streets and the guarded parks, by the rusty fountains and the dusty trees.
Okay.
What it'll do is it'll preserve that entrance when it comes down there. So try to remember that.
Obviously, the great little exchange where they're arguing over the pronunciation of booby.
Yeah. Bobby, booby, baby, booby, booby. And you can see Sondheim's just like, goody, like, just say it. It's like goody, but with a B. It's just say it. And she just and he's like, yeah, I know you're probably not going to do it right anyway. You know, it's like, he literally says, like, I know you're probably going to just say it wrong, you know, but it's so funny.
And it's like, I have so much respect for Sondheim, especially watching this, of how he's trying to navigate the fact of, like, I'm not saying, like, I understand that, like, you know, what it's hurtful to be told that you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And especially, you know, when you get toward the end and it's Elaine Stritch and she just can't do it at that point. And she does eventually.
Right.
But it's like the way that he's, like, always approaching it so gently, even as, you know, we cut back to the control room and he's, like, got his head in his hands, and it, like, every little thing that's wrong is just, like, you could tell it's just driving him insane because he's got the, you know, because it's not what he wrote.
Right. And he always starts everything with, not to upset you, but, you know, he's telling them, I don't want to make you upset, but you do have to change it. And I think, you know, this just really highlights how complicated, but also how much of a genius, you know, he was. And the music is so difficult. There's the one, I'm Not Getting Married Today, that song.
That's
and
probably
I'm just
my favorite.
like, how the hell is this woman singing it? I was like, I just don't even know.
Listen, everybody, look, I don't know what you're waiting for. What's a wedding? It's a prehistoric ritual where everybody promises fidelity forever, which is maybe the most horrifying word I ever heard, which is followed by a honeymoon where suddenly he realizes he's saddled with a nut to want to kill me, which you should.
You know, it's just remarkable. It's he writes it in such a way where it's the music and the lyrics are just really, really difficult, and there's just so much going on, and it's not quite like, because Sondheim has never really been my cup of tea. He's a little bit like, the music, I find it to be a bit meandering and sort of
it circles around and then comes back. It's like, it's building on like a lot of big ideas, and sometimes it's very dissonant compared to like a lot more like catchy songs.
Yeah, and I can sort of appreciate about that about him too, because it's really interesting and complicated and complex, and I think it's really cool, even though it's not necessarily my thing. But there are so many fantastic songs in this score. Being Alive is just my favorite one out of this.
Someone to crown you with love, someone to force you to care, someone to make you come through, who'll always be there, as frightened as you of being alive.
I think that the way that Pennebaker just captures that performance, I mean, you can like see this guy's tonsils practically. You know, he's like so up close to him as he's singing it, and just like the power, of the performance. And after he sings it, and they're like, "Okay, can we do one more take?" And you're like, "Again, how is this guy gonna go up there and do one more take?" It's one thing to do it once a night, which is a big feat, but it's another thing to go in there and do 3-4 takes of these songs. They're all big powerhouse numbers.
Absolutely. And one thing that I always think about when I watch these old sort of, kind of fly on the wall style documentaries is how difficult it must have been to do so on film. As opposed to digital, because now you can just keep the cameras rolling for as long as you want, But for this, you probably get like maybe 15 minutes, and then you have the sound of the cameras, so you need to put it in a blimp to make sure that you're not disturbing the actual audio recording going on. And there's no way for Pennebaker to monitor what the other cameras are doing that are there.
Yeah.
So the fact that like there was one scene where you have Sondheim sort of in the booth and talking with the other people about what he's going to go out and say, or like they send him out to say something else entirely, and that's when he comes in with like, "You've been pronouncing booby wrong."
Yeah.
And I think I just got it wrong again. Booby.
Yeah.
Let's hear you say it.
Booby.
That's it. Booby.
But when I sing it, it goes, Bobby, baby, Bobby, booby, Bobby.
No, it's Booby.
Bobby, baby, Bobby, booby, Bobby.
Booby.
Bobby, baby, Bobby, booby, Bobby.
Bobby, baby, Bobby, good.
Bobby, baby, Bobby, booby, Bobby.
That's it. That's it.
To be able to gather all of this material and to make sure that you're rolling before the moment you're trying to capture happens, when you don't know what's going to happen in a given moment, and then you run out of film, how are you going to change it? You know, like just the massive organizational undertaking that must have been, I don't think can really be overstated to people who are used to working with memory cards.
Yeah, I think it's just does a really great job too of capturing what feels like pivotal moments in the recording without it feeling, it feels very natural, and it feels like the stuff is just happening. And it's a very short, it's like 52 minutes long, but you feel like you got a good picture of most of the events that went on, even though it's not the full 19-hour recording process. But I think it does a really good job of kind of creating the story of the recording with what they were able to capture.
So you mentioned that Being Alive is your favorite song. Were there any other kind of musical moments that really like jumped out at you in terms of like ones that you're going to take away with you, I guess?
I think that it would be the I'm Not Getting Married Today song. I know I mentioned that one before, but just like also the fact that the song kind of jumps between I'm not sure of the character's name, but she's just like spitting out these phrases so quickly that you can hardly even make out what she's saying, to this, and then it kind of like jumps over to this very melodic, it's
wedding music,
yeah,
it's like the organ
wedding
comes
music,
in.
and it's just kind of back and forth, and you feel this like frantic energy. She's not getting married today, but the wedding music is playing,
begging everybody to just go home, leave.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Just really, really great. And then, of course, Ladies Who Lunch. I mean, that is, really probably the number. Being Alive and the Ladies Who Lunch, those two are really kind of the numbers of the show. And, Elaine Stritch is, she was a Broadway legend. And I just, there's nothing like that performance. It's pretty unhinged, actually.
Let's hear it for the ladies who watch everybody rise.
It's also, it struck me this time that like the lyrics of the song are like, kind of about this woman who's sort of watching the world pass her by as, she's having brunch, and she's just getting drunk during the day and, kind of reflecting on that experience and aging and, the fact that she's going to die. And it's like watching Elaine Stritch struggle to get through it. It kind of like, it all kind of plays together. Like if a screenwriter wrote that, it might have been like that's a little on the nose, don't you think?
Yeah.
But it really happened.
She was an alcoholic in her real life, and that was something she struggled with for years, and was a complication that led to her, to her death eventually. And she lived a good long life, and she writes about this, I know, extensively in her one-woman show that was out. I believe it was called Elaine Stritch at Liberty, that came out in kind of the early 2000s, and she talks about that. And I was thinking about that as she's singing the song. She's having such a struggle with it. And it's like she's trying to fake being, drunk and sort of, singing the song and being tired. And I don't know that she was, drunk during this recording. I don't think she was. I'm not sure when her substance abuse started. But, it was something I was kind of thinking about during it. Because I'm like, this song seems like it was kind of written for her in a lot of ways, And she really brings that to the performance. So, that's, to me, the real standout. I think that, the documentary is kind of all centered around that big, that big kind of ending there. That kind of, tops everything off.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that, for me, the standout for me is Not Getting Married. I think that's just such a brilliant song. I just think that the frantic energy of that. I also just love, like, when people go really fast in a Broadway show, a more contemporary example would be Satisfied from Hamilton. And actually, in the co-op episode of Documentary Now, that was what led us to this documentary initially. She sings the version of that, like their parody of that song.
Yeah.
It just feels right to admit I did a little bit of cocaine tonight. Do you have more?
I can get some.
So that's the energy that these songs have.
Right.
But the other one that to me I just think is just so funny is The Little Things We Do Together.
Yeah.
Or The Little Things You Do Together. It's like, because like the play it's all about like this group of people, his friend group is like pressuring this one guy to get married. And, sort of the different ways that it goes about, the different kinds of relationships that he's exposed to among his friends, marriages falling apart, getting together. And I just love the acknowledgement that you don't see in a lot of culture how, marriage can take all these different shapes and forms. The little things you do together, they talk about like, sharing kinks and swapping clothes and, the people that you date together. And it's like, I love the fact that it's not narrowly defined, especially, this was like, 60 years ago now.
It's not so hard to be married.
It's much the simplest of crimes.
It's not so hard to be married.
I've done it 3 or 4 times.
And it's so interesting, too, because, Sondheim, and in this he talks about doing the lyrics for West Side Story, and that's a musical that is so, very romantic, and this Romeo and Juliet, retelling this very specific, sort of star-crossed lovers thing. And I think, like, with Company, this is kind of like, this is the reality of relationships. Is, like you said, everything is different. And even the song Being Alive, it's kind of just about, like, what is finding a relationship? It's just someone to sort of navigate life with, and, someone who's going to sit in your chair and ruin your sleep, he says, and all these kind of things. And I think that's, what the show really brings out, are the smaller, more quiet moments really in relationships that's what makes a relationship.
The podcast that you host together.
Exactly. The podcast that you host together. Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think it's like I said, it's not really like my cup of tea. Sondheim isn't, aside from like Sweeney Todd. I do really
Sweeney
enjoy.
Todd is amazing.
But I really enjoyed watching the creative process because it's something you don't always get to see, making of like your favorite, music and, even, musicals, whatever. It's really cool to just get those behind the scenes look at it and to watch these people, you think, wow, they're just right now they're doing it in this kind of contained, setting, but they also go out and do this in front of people live every night. And that is even more remarkable to me, because it's, you go out and each show is different, and it's, it's never, I think that's what's so cool about live theater is that you can never recreate that show exactly the same the next night.
No. And I'm just a sucker for any movie that spends a lot of time on process and labor and stuff like that. So for me, like this is crack for me. I am hooked on this film and films like it, and Pennebaker was one of the best.
Yeah.
We keep referring to the parody of it, the co-op with John Mulaney, Richard Kind, and so many other great talented performers. I'm bringing the Criterion DVD into the collection, and I believe that is included in the supplemental material, as well as a COVID-era Zoom meeting, like reunion of the cast of Co-op.
Oh, okay. That's really cool. I was going to say, I don't think it's the cast of Company, because honestly, most of them are dead, which is another remarkable thing I was thinking about watching this is like, wow, we're at the point in film history too where it's so cool that we have these archives of this footage of like these people who are, most of them are no longer with us anymore, and that's just gonna that just is gonna continue more and more as we technology has advanced in a way that we are chronicling things in a different way than we ever could before. And now you say like the 70s, you're talking about 60 years ago, and that's crazy to me because I still think of the 70s as like 30 years ago or something, like what it was when I was growing up in like the 90s or 2000s. And so to kind of go back and see this now, it's like, wow, this is crazy because all of these people like lived and created and were part of this thing that is a moment in time, and now it's no longer, but it's just like preserved here so perfectly.
And films are weird like that because even like fictional films, it's like you're still like it still had to happen in front of the camera in some regard. That's another reason I love films that kind of blur the line between like narrative and documentary. But a film like The Third Man, it's like you're actually seeing post-war Austria, post-war Vienna, Austria in that film, and in this you're actually seeing like all of these real Broadway legends. So yeah, that is my case for this film to join the collection. What is your vote on it?
My vote is it can absolutely join the collection. I think this is a really wonderful documentary. And even if you're not a fan of the show, I think if you're a fan of either documentaries, musical theater, just kind of behind the scenes look at creative processes, this is just, one you've got to watch. So, yeah, absolutely.
If you're a nerd like us, this is for you.
This is for you. But yeah, absolutely, it can stay.
Before I let us go, I did just have to point out that the title number of Company gets stuck in my head all the time. I do not actually know the words to it, but my brain puts in the words of the song that Bob sings in the dream sequence in Twin Peaks. So I'll just be going about my day, and suddenly I'll hear heads up, tails up, running to you, scallywag. Night falls, pudding calls, catch you with my death bag.
Wow.
So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Little things you do together.
The little things you do together.
All right. Make marriage a joy.
Such a joy. Well, thank you for joining us on our first Reclutter episode. And I have a surprise for you coming up, a Reclutter. So I'm going to keep that a surprise until we reveal. And that'll probably be coming in a few weeks. And between then, I think we have another episode coming out, which will be Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock. And until then, we will see you on our next episode of
The Reclutter. We got it. Did it. One try. One take.
Great. That's one hell of a good take. I want you to come in and listen to it.
Perfect. And let's hear it for the ladies.